Hello everybody, welcome to our next lesson on computer fundamentals. Today we're going to talk about the 7 things that a computer can do. And we will start our timer. Now when I say 7 things a computer can do, that doesn't mean that these are the only things a computer can do, but what it is it's the 7 fundamental things that a computer can do that all programs are built upon. If you learn these 7 things, it's very easy to go to different languages and write great programs. So let's get right to it. Let's first talk a little bit about how your program runs or executes. You'll hear both of those terms, runs or executes. The CPU, as we know, gets instructions. So your program is simply just a list of instructions, and the instructions are executed in a sequence, starting at the top, going to the bottom typically, but we'll talk a little bit more about how that might be different later in this video. So each instruction gets passed to the CPU, and the CPU executes that instruction. Now when the CPU executes that instruction, it does one of these 7 things that we talk about. So it will go through each of your instructions, passing those to the CPU for execution and run. Okay? So now let's talk about the 7 things a computer can do. First of all, it can store and retrieve a value. So we can take a value, we can store it in memory, we can get it back. Second, it can compare 2 values. If we have 2 values in memory, it can compare those to see if one's greater than the other one. Finally, it can perform math operations, plus, minus, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. It can receive input, produce output. It can repeat instructions, that's very important, and it can go to a specific instruction. So let's look at each one of these in detail. First of all, we can store and retrieve a value. So in computer memory, if we have a value, it gets put in memory. We can get it back out of memory. Now you'll notice that everything that goes into memory, what we might think of as a value like the number 1, is actually binary. Next, it can compare 2 values. Now when you program, you're not going to have to program in binary. We've already talked about that, but I'm just showing this to illustrate what happens actually in the computer. So we can determine, are they the same? Is one greater than the other? Is one less than the other? And so on. It can perform math. If there's 2 values there, we can add, subtract, multiply, or divide. We can receive input. We talked about different devices like a hard drive. We could get a value from that into memory. Or a mouse. When a mouse clicks, that causes an action. That's because something gets put into memory and processed by the CPU. And finally, a keyboard. Can also a keystroke, like the number 1, for example. We could get input from other places like the network as well. We could also produce output. So output to the screen, we can tell it, and it will turn into something legible that we would see. That actually happens further down in the hardware, but this is a good illustration. We can also output to other devices. We could repeat instructions. If you see our program here on the left with the yellow arrow, we could jump back and start executing the same instructions over and over again. So we can repeat one or more instructions one or more times. So we get the hello world again and again. Finally, we could go to a specific instruction. So we could jump to a different part of the program and resume execution there. So at some point, the CPU can say, skip over these instructions. So those would be skipped and not executed. That's very important. So just as a summary, to wrap this up, the 7 things a computer can be instructed to do: store and retrieve values, compare 2 values, perform math, receive input, produce output, repeat instructions, and go to a specific instruction. If you learn these fundamentals in any computer language, you'll be successful in writing programs. All software that's written, no matter how wonderful of a thing it does, a video game, a word processing program, at its core, at its heart, at its fundamental level, it does these things. Using these in combinations is what makes the magic happen in programming. So that's it for this session. We're going to start moving towards these specifically to look at how we might program them. We'd love to hear from you at 5minuteprogrammer@gmail.com if you'd like to send us an email. Also, check out our Facebook page, or you can see our blog at 5minuteprogrammer.com. See you next time.